Welcome everyone to part one of a two-part parenting series. Today, we are hosting a roundtable of parents who are living without both hands or arms or all four limbs. We will discuss all things parenting from their lived experiences. Stay tuned in 2025 for part two, where we will cover parenting a child who is living with limb difference. Our moderator today for today's roundtable is Anae Jones. And Anae is a congenital bilateral upper limb difference foot user. She has a daughter named Lizzie, who's 20, and a son named Tarek, who's 17. And she completes her activities of daily living with her toes and feet and uses some adaptive equipment. We also have several panelists joining us for today's roundtable. And first we have Tori Mugo. Tori is a quadruple amputee, bilateral below elbow and bilateral below knee, and completes her activities of daily living, or ADLs, with her prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as her residual limbs. She is mom to son Xander. And next we have Erica, who's also a quadruple amputee, bilateral below elbow and bilateral below knee, and completes her ADLs with her prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as her residual limbs. She is mom to daughter Lily and son Michael. And next we have Lauren, who is also a quadruple amputee, bilateral below elbow and bilateral below knee, who also completes her ADLs with her prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as her residual limbs. She is mom to son Leo, daughter Liana, and son Logan. And Anya next was born without her arms at the shoulder and completes her ADLs with her toes and feet, as well as adaptive equipment. She is mom to son Jacob. Next we have Elizabeth, who's a quadruple amputee, bilateral below elbow and bilateral below knee, and completes her ADLs with her prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as her residual limbs. She is mom to son Carson and daughter Mia. And next we have Amanda, who is a quadruple amputee, a bilateral below elbow, bilateral above knee, and completes her ADLs with her prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as her residual limbs. And she is mom to sons TJ and Andy. And next we have Brandon, who's a bilateral below elbow amputee and completes his activities of daily living with his prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as his residual limbs. He is father to daughters Harper and Addie. And next we have Christina Pacheco, who is a quadruple amputee, bilateral below elbow and bilateral below knee, and completes her ADLs with her prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as her residual limbs. She is mom to son Owen and daughter Amelia. And next we have Mike, who is a quadruple amputee. He is an elbow dysartic on one side and a below elbow on the other side, and he's a bilateral below knee. He completes his ADLs with his prosthetic devices or device, adaptive equipment, as well as his residual limbs. He is father to daughter Sammy. And next we have Jason, who's a bilateral below elbow amputee and completes his ADLs with his prosthetic devices, adaptive equipment, as well as his residual limbs. He is father to daughters Billy Grace and Campbell, as well as son Axel. And Elena Perez, and she was born without her arms at the shoulder and completes her ADLs with her toes and feet, as well as adaptive equipment. She is mom to son Dominic, daughters Adriana and Azriela, and she's welcoming a son next month. And then a picture of our panelists. And so let's get started. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Anae take it over from here.
Sure. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for participating in this panel and being willing to share your experiences. We all know that sharing is really powerful and helps others down the road, and we are all about that in our community. So this will be fairly relaxed. We'll go through some different topics. I know beforehand you let me know some of the topics you were interested in learning. Amanda, let me know if there's specific ones you want to jump in on. But if there's ones you didn't put your name down on, but you have something you want to say, then just let me know. What might work, I'll call out people's names, but I'll also, if you want to just raise a limb, raise the hand function in Zoom, or just speak up, whatever is easiest for you. So if there was a raise a foot feature, I would do that on Zoom as well, but there isn't. All right. So let's get started off with some of the basics. You find out you're having a baby or you have a young child, and there's all these day-to-day adaptations that need to happen when a child or baby is young, such as dressing, bottle feeding, breastfeeding, bathing, diapers, potty training, tantrums, car seats, cribs, all of those things, carriers, strollers. Does anyone want to start us off with how they tackled some of those day-to-day tasks?
Sure, I'll go. So our daughter was 6 months old when I got sick, not quite a year old when I got out of the hospital. And I received my upper limb prosthetics about 2 months after that. So in the beginning, when she was a baby and a toddler, my wife handled a lot of the duties. I think Jason can attest to this. Getting out of diaper duty, I think, was one of the benefits.
It is.
So, but just being there supportive, as well as it was interesting because in my particular situation, a lot of the learning growth milestones we were kind of sort of going through together, learning how to feed ourselves, learning how to toilet, learning how to get dressed and all that. So sometimes there was maybe a little bit of competition as to who was going to be potty trained first. But just trying to support my wife and sometimes get out of her way, and then sometimes actually help with our daughter when it came to different things, like bottle feeding, things like that. I could hold the bottle in my hook and do that. I could put her to bed, excuse me, things like that.
Okay. And did you make any adaptations to like strollers, cribs, anything like that?
No, she got to ride with me a lot. So in a power wheelchair, that was definitely a bonus, and got to do some bonding time that way. And Christine would be like, put her down. She's never going to learn how to walk. And I'm like, I don't care.
She did. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Brandon, do you want to share?
Yes, absolutely. So I wasn't fortunate enough to get out of diaper duty on my end. So I had my accident. I lost my hands. And 6 months later, we had our oldest, Harper. And within a year, I was a stay-at-home dad while my wife went back to work. So a couple things that we learned. We'll start with diapers. I brought one here. The best thing that I found is before I would put a diaper on, you wanted to flat it out as best as possible. So I go to a sharp corner on a cabinet or any kind of table, and I made this diaper as flat as possible because when they're all folded up, it's so hard to get a baby underneath a folded up diaper. So the more flat you can make a diaper, the better it is. And also for me, I was fortunate enough, I had a prosthetic where I was just my right side. My left hand did not have a prosthetic. So I did a lot of the holding the baby with my left, and I do a lot of the grabbing the diaper with my right. So that was my biggest tip, was having a set of prosthetics to where I wasn't constantly poking the baby, hurting her at all. So that definitely was huge help. I come to find out I took a changing table, I took the mat off, and I went to our king size bed. So I did all my diaper changing on a king size bed because my thought was that baby can roll any direction and it gives me enough time to catch her before she would roll off. So I learned to change on the king size bed. I would put down different mats and even paper towel to help with whenever they do have a blowout to help wipe. So I was always prepared, and I learned the hard way a few times to where I was using my mouth to get a poopy diaper off, and you're kind of spitting and gagging, but you do what you have to, you had to do what you had to do in those situations. On the bottle feeding side, at first I couldn't wear prosthetics, so I ended up having a kind of a setup made where it was Velcro on the bottle, and I could slide that onto my residual limb, and I could feed a bottle baby with no prosthetics on, because again, having sharp edges always seemed to poke the baby. So the more I could have my prosthetics off, handling babies was always easiest for me while I was home with them. So again, it was just a Velcro. I'd throw this in the dishwasher and you pull this off, it would just stick right to it. So that was a huge help while we were on the bottle. When it came to car seats, I come to find getting car seats unbuckled to be very difficult. So on Amazon, I believe they make this little buckle thing you could put on the middle button, and it makes pushing that button so much easier. You can just push with one little nub and it'll pop that car seat open compared to trying to get underneath it. So that was a huge, huge lifesaver, was finding this, and I'm not even sure the name. It's Unbuckle Me on Amazon, I believe, is where we got that. Super, super huge. Something else I struggle with whenever you get a car seat, I felt like the two hooks would always slide under the baby, and I'd have to try to pick her up. So I come to find, I think it came off a toy, It's just two Velcro that we put on straps to keep the hooks from sliding under at all times. It kept that hook from sliding down. And again, it's just something simple that keeps your hook from going under the baby whenever you go to layer in it.
Yeah. And what about like buckling the baby up?
I would always go straight to my king side bed just because I had lots of room. I'd lay the baby down, have my prosthetic laying there. I'd scoop the baby up, lay her in the car seat. I'd get the car seat prepped pretty much first, but then I'd lay her in there and I would slip on my right hook and I would have help hold her and I would get her arms through using my nub. It took a little bit of practice, but you get better as time. But again, it was always easier to do it on the king size bed because for me, bending over on the ground's hard. Getting up a little bit was best. And then same thing with undoing a car seat. I would unbuckle and do it on the king size bed if I was at home. And I would take off my arm, undo her, and slowly slip her out, tipping her forward and almost catching her with my right side without my prosthetic. That to me was the easiest. Again, and if something happened, she just fell to the soft bed.
And did you have any adaptations to your crib to make it safer?
We did not. Luckily, I'm almost 6 foot, so I could reach over far enough to grab. And children, I swear, they adapt so quick. Before you know it, they're hanging around your neck, and I'm pinching arms with your chin, and they hang on so much better. My niece, I went to grab her one day, and she didn't know how to grab it. I'm like, what's wrong? But you get so used to your own child learning how to grab a hold of your neck at a young age. It's absolutely amazing.
True. So, yeah, I've seen lots of head nodding.
Something else I found for feeding, I would put these little squeezies has made a lifesaver for me. Instead of having to constantly sit there and spoon feed from a young age, the babies can hold this. Once they get to the food age, you just get the top off and they'll just sit and suck it just like a bottle once they would hold it. So that to me, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. We usually went to Aldi's and got the healthier versions, but I know they make these squeezies in all kinds of flavors and different things compared to the old school bottles that everyone had to use. So those are my really big things going through diapers to car seats and I struggled with changing children. So my wife would usually get them dressed in the morning. And if they did have a blowout, usually they just left the diaper on and we turned the heat up in the house because until my wife would get home. So it was just one of those. You do what you got to do. We were both learning at the same time for the first year of our life. We learned to live a new life with a baby and also not having arms. So we just adapted. We just always adapted to everything all the time. So
it sounds like you took it as an adventure, Brandon. So
absolutely. And it was just funny because I think it was the day before I left. My wife went back to work. She's like, "Are you going to try to put a diaper on a baby?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe we should try that." So it was the day before. So yeah, it's been an adventure for us.
All right, Amanda, you're up.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about kids get sick constantly, right? And mine were I missed my 3-year-old's birthday when I was in the hospital. So I came home to a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old that, thank goodness, were both potty trained. So I really didn't need to worry about diapers. But I remember things like pink eye, and my level of limb loss is a little different where I'm above knee. So beginning, I rejected upper limb prosthetics. Like a lot of people, they're a lot harder to use than some of us make them look now. So I learned to do a lot of things with my mouth the first few years. And I remember my son got pink eye because he was in school. And so I learned obviously to use my mouth. I was not using prosthetics of any type at that time. And I would crawl down on the floor because obviously we talked a little bit about temper tantrums. I don't want eye drops in my eyes. So of course my 3-year-old didn't want them. And I would pin him down and I would have the eyedropper in my mouth. And as I pinned him down, I would pull his eye open with my residual limb and, pop them in the corner and then turn his head while he was screaming, because that's the reality of what we had to do. Thank God they're older now. They just scream because they're teenagers. But I remember that with the giving them the medication was a really hard one to figure out. And honestly, I just I think a lot of people with limbs still use the pinning them down trick because the reality is they squirm. So
For sure. Thank you,
that's
Amanda. Awesome. Let's go on to Anya.
Okay, so my experience of becoming a mom is very different than I think everybody else here because I was a single parent and got pregnant very unexpectedly. So I have not had any type of experience with babies. So I was like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? I ended up going to occupational therapy, kind of practice an adult, which is clearly not the same as a life baby. Um, I did have my mom with me at home for the first year. And I think that was the hardest when my son was not walking. That was difficult because I'm little and weak, and I was afraid of picking him up, dropping him. So just moving him from one spot to another was like the biggest challenge. I could dress him, I could change him, I could feed him. My mom did make me a little like out of an elastic, like a band that would go around the bottle, and it had a little tab on one side that I would hold. So that was one adaptation that I had. I did also use a stroller in the house. So like, if I had him laid in the stroller and wanted to move him from one room to another, then I could just push the stroller as opposed to having to pick him up. But like I said, my neighbor actually had her baby like 3 days after I had mine. So my mom ended up babysitting her baby. So we had two babies at home. So that was hopeful. What else? I never used the high chair because I wasn't able to pick him up into it. So I used one of those it was like a high chair topper thing, the little one that you put on top of a normal chair. So
Yes.
then I would just put it on the floor so he would be able to sit in it by himself once he got a little older, obviously. Um, that was one thing. I really never left the house alone with him until he was 2, I think. So it was just stuff inside the house. Um, let me think. Giving
Stroller?
him, huh?
Did you use a stroller, Anya?
I could use a stroller. It was not comfortable. Just because I would have to like bend down and use my shoulders or my chin to push it. So because I had my mom, those kind of things she would help me out with. I remember when he was little and she did have to leave the house, I would just make sure that he's in a place where I could, change him if I had to and do all of that. We did have a crib, and we actually took down the one side, and then I had my mattress on the floor. So it's all like nothing's high up so he won't fall or anything. So that was a little bit easier. And then once he did get bigger, then I would use like one of those baby leash things,
Mm-hmm.
so he don't run away. But it was a lot of talking. I mean, he's 15 now, and it's still a lot of talking. Don't do this because, mommy can't do that. And, don't run into the street because I can't just chase after you and um all of that. So, but yeah, first year was hard. And then it got hard again once he got to be a teenager, but we're surviving.
Thank you, Anya. Actually, I can echo a lot of those things, especially like using your voice. I had to learn how to use my voice to help direct the kids. So, like keeping them safe. I used to like go for walks. I'd throw my leg out in front of them to say, nope. I'm like, and I would just say, if you don't hold on to me, we have to go home. And really, that was such an empty threat because if they had run away from me, which that would have been it. But using my voice was very important. I was gonna say safe day diaper changing, keeping them distracted. I do it down on the ground with my feet, and I like the idea of laying out the diaper as flat as possible. A couple things I did a little bit differently. My mom and sister made me a little baby carrier that I was able to have over my shoulders. It was kind of like a bed. I had carried my kids in that. initially when they were just little, and then I had one of those rocking chairs vibrator chairs that I put the kids in to get them from the living room to their bedroom for nap time. And then my crib was adapted where we took the whole one side off and it was on hinges. So down and no legs on it at all. So it was accessible for me since I'm a foot user. And I did not also get out of diaper duty. I did most of the diapers. And then, dressing. My daughter was bottle fed, so that wasn't really a problem. I used my toes to do that. And then my son, I did nurse him, and there was a huge learning curve with that. And a lot of it was me mentally deciding that it was going to be okay if I didn't nurse him. But we had some learning to do because he was little and it was hard to get him to latch. And so we tried laying down positions initially, and I even got some help from my mom and my mother-in-law to help us initially. And then I said, no, he has to learn how to do it. And so that stubbornness just stuck in, and we said, if he really wants to eat, he's going to figure out a way. And he did. And I ended up nursing him for almost a year. And it changed, our positions changed from laying down to, he learned to, when I would pick him up, he would also hold on to my hair and my shirt and kind of hug me, and I'd be able to like swing him around onto my lap. So I think, that is really amazing how kids will adapt, especially to like the carrying thing. High chair. I did have a high chair that actually lowered down, so I was able to lift my kids into that. And then a stroller. I had a strap. I used a jogging stroller because they're a little bit easier to maneuver. And then I had a strap, so I put myself in between the strap and the stroller, and that was the way that I could like move it around. And car seats were always really difficult. I was homebound as well for the first 2 to 3 years until the kids could actually help get their car seat done up. So those are probably the big ones for me. But I still would love to hear from Erica, and then Elizabeth, and then Christina. So go ahead, Erica.
My turn.
Yeah.
So I got sick when I was 19. So then when it was time to have my kids, I was 29 when I had Lily. So I'd been an amputee for 10 years already. But so my husband initially, he changed every diaper for the first month while I focused on feeding. And I was thankfully able to nurse my kids because that was the easiest for me to do functionally, not have to fuss around with bottles or anything like that. And then when he went back to work, it was like, okay, it's game time. Got to figure out, diapers and everything like that. I personally have a longer left arm. So just like Brandon said, having one arm, I would slide out. I'm fit loose because this was my arm that I would touch and position my kiddos with, like with diaper changing. And then when I had Michael, he took off a couple weeks and I was like, okay, you're fine with 2 kids now. I'm like, okay, here we go. But my husband actually works nights. So I was and I work part-time and I'm an OT myself. So the crib was something that I did struggle with because in the night I use a chair. So I was finding I was like teetering on the crib a lot to get them out. So I just ended up having my kids lay in the bed next to me because I'm just going to fuss as little as possible. And, everyone has an opinion. Your kids should not sleep in your bed. Well, then come over at 2 a.m. Okay.
Exactly.
So,
I agree with
they
that.
just slept next to me. And I also use my mouth for a lot of things. If something falls on the floor when I'm in the bed, I'm going to lean down and pick it up with my mouth. As far as like clothing and all, I didn't necessarily use adaptive equipment, but I was very choosy in what I bought. So if I couldn't do it in the store, it was not coming home with me. Car seats, strollers, the stroller had to be as lightweight as possible. I would put the car seat on basically a frame stroller that I could put in the car easily. I was able to carry the car seat because I have my length, and I would rest the car seat on my socket to get underneath the handle to click it in place. If a button was too rounded, I would not buy it. Because we all talk about those car seats. So it had to be a flatter button for me to push. If it was, just like I said, I was very particular with the things that I bought. And then everyone talks about how resilient kids are and just how they learn to accommodate. So, and then just even as an OT, you know what people are capable of. But then probably my kids, not even in a bragging way, they just wanted to do things sooner. So, Lily's my first, and she was doing zippers and clothing and stuff like that much sooner than other kids her age. You know, like neighbors would come over and they would be like, "Can you help with my shoes?" I'm like, "But why? Like, why are you not doing this?" You know, so like, and so you don't realize like how much kids can do. So, you know, they become your little helpers. But I would just say like the main thing for me also is not to like, don't let your pride get in the way. And if you need help, you need help. It's okay. You know, there were nights when if it was just feeling overwhelming, I would go sleep at my parents' house. And then I had people there if he was going to be gone. So because they still live in the house, that was modified for me after I got sick. So if it was a day I worked, like I said, I worked part-time, but if it was a day I knew I had to get out of the house early and my mom was going to watch them, I just would go sleep at my parents' house. So just, I think the biggest thing is like, don't forget about your people because they want to help.
Right. And I think remembering most parents, new parents, have a parent or someone that is supporting them. A lot of people do. And some people are not fortunate for that. So looking at it that perspective, because I'd have people like, "Oh, your mom must come over and do everything for you." I'm like, no, she comes over and yes, she helps me with things, but she comes over to be grandma, not to be mom.
I wanted to be mindful that she just needed to be like, keep her as the grandma role and not like, you don't want to put too much on them, you know? So, and friends and neighbors and everyone want to help if you need them.
So I do have a question, Erica, because I know I ran into this, like the kids doing things sooner. So did you find like they walked sooner? Like as soon as I couldn't carry the kids anymore, I had them crawling after me. And
no, my kids were bowling balls. They were happy to just, I'm like, this seemed kind of lazy. I don't know. But like, yeah, they were. They were. And I also cruised around in my chair with them. So maybe they were happy about that.
Okay. I made them follow me everywhere. I'm like, you can crawl, you can walk, you can follow around.
And I did use the backpack leash because they were not about to get away from me. I can't keep up. So,
And
no shame.
Temper tantrums. How did you deal with that?
Oh, yeah, I think they're worse now with a 10-year-old. Oh my word. Yeah, I mean, really just like I said, same with the physical maneuvering. I would slide out of my arm, pick them up and put them in a timeout. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, we're not doing this. And then when they fight, you know, everyone has that stage, fighting the car seat, fighting the diaper, fighting getting dressed. Oh my word. So I would be either on the floor or on the bed. And I would use my leg. My brother-in-law taught me that trick. He's like, put your leg across their thighs and keep them from kicking. So it's just like a little maneuver, like use what you got, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. You do have to pin them down.
It.
Yeah, you just have to. They're not hurt. They're just being stubborn.
Sometimes be like, I'm sorry, this child's having a temper tantrum and they're going to have it right here. And I'm going to stay here with them and not take them to the room. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, even in public, you're just like, we're not doing this right now. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, let's hear from Elizabeth. You have to unmute there.
Unmuted. So I have like so many similarities and also a little bit different. So it's great to compare. So my son was about 3.5 when I got sick, and my daughter was 3 months. So I had done my son, you know, with all of my limbs, and then had my daughter. And when she was about 3 months old, I was in the hospital. So when I woke up from a induced coma, I had a newborn and no hands. So that was interesting and learning how to deal with things and adapting. And it's really cool to listen to some of you because I did change diapers, but not with prosthetics. So there's so many things to like that are jogging my memory. But I think some of my main tips for the diapering without prosthetics, I have a pretty long right arm and a pretty short left arm, but I would mostly do the floor, less maybe take off my legs to change a diaper, less chance of rolling off. And I also did the flat diaper trick. And the other thing I did is I took the tabs and I like stuck them to whatever surface I was on. So like the opposite way. And I would also leave the dirty diaper on while I did that, and then took off the dirty diaper, and then just managed to like do it with my limbs and flip the tabs back over, all that good stuff. I could get the wipe with my arms. I also had to use my mouth, but mostly just to like undo a tab or grab a wipe. I didn't.
Not gonna wipe.
I didn't get too close to anything else. But I agree, if there was another adult in the house, then they get to change the diaper. And I always say to people, I think it's really important to know that you can change a diaper if you're alone, or like you can get a bottle, but also to second what Erica said, people want to help. But I also had an interesting situation because I was in the hospital for when they were little. So I did have all these people that kind of took the mom role, and then I wanted to take it back, and I had to do it step by step. And I was also like, is my daughter going to walk first, or am I going to walk first? And she beat me to it. She was 10 months and started moving along. But it was super interesting to go through all those phases with her. And as for the car seat, I also used the unbuckle me when they got a little bit older, but I was nervous that my son would unbuckle himself while I was driving. Because it's actually a tool for the kid to learn how to unbuckle, which is great because my kids learn how to buckle and unbuckle quicker than most kids. But when they were really little, I would get the bumpers that you put like on the back of a cabinet on the button just to make it easier for me to push down. It took me a while to get prosthetics, and then I had learned to do so much without them. So I was not like an all-day wearer. So that's how I did that. I did have a nanny for a little bit when I first got home from the hospital because I was still healing. But yeah, when I wanted to be mom again. So when she went back, I had to learn how to do all those things.
What was maybe the biggest obstacle in kind of taking that mom role back?
Gosh, probably driving. I know, like, making sure you were safe, and like also making sure if you get them in and out of a car, they're not going to run away. I also use my voice. I taught them how to grab onto me. I often told them if you let go, like we are leaving. Same thing with temper tantrums. I would scoop up and we would do it in a car, like wait it out in a car until we were ready. But being able to feed them by myself and drive them. And I guess clothing also like Erica, everything stretchy. Like if it was stiff, like it's like elastic is your friend, like anything stretchy. So I could get my arms under there and put it over them or pull them up. Just the basics.
That's great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, Christina, you're up.
Okay. So I would say my situation was pretty similar to Elizabeth's. I got sick right after having my daughter. So by the time I got out of the hospital, she was already 3 months and I had a 2.5-year-old son. So like she said, I had learned how to do everything, being a first-time mom with my son, with all of my limbs. And then I go home and I have a 2.5-year-old and a newborn, well, 3-month-old, but they're still pretty little at that point. And I would have to agree on taking the mom role back. So many people stepped in, same thing, taking care of my daughter. My mom did, my mother-in-law, and it hurt, I guess, we talk about doing all the things, but there's that emotional piece too, is that taking that mom role back, it kind of feels, I don't even know how to describe it. It's very emotional because you feel like you should be the one doing all those things and you're watching somebody else doing the things you want to be doing. And so I would feel like emotionally, that's the hardest part to deal with. Functionally, same thing with the diapers. Now that I'm doing most things with my residuals. I'm not really using my prosthetics. I find that they get more in the way than they are helpful. And kids are not patient. So y'all are all parents. Y'all know that kids are not patient whatsoever. And if they need a diaper change, if they need a bottle, they're not going to wait around for you to put your arms on and wait till I have my electric. So wait till they're opening and closing. So I had to learn to adapt to do everything without. So I am using my mouth a lot. Our son is potty trained. By the time I came back home, he luckily got potty training within 2 weeks. I think he was just waiting for me to come back home, and he got potty training. So that was happy. But we still had our daughter in diapers. So same thing, taking that support. My mom lived with us for a few months. My dad lived with us. My mother-in-law lives in town. So all those roles were, playing my role. My husband is a coach. So he is a varsity football coach. So he works about 80, 90 hours a week. So people were coming over. If my dad wasn't here during the week, my mother-in-law comes over and helps me with the kids. Sorry, going back to diapers. I do tabs with my mouth. I make sure I open the tabs first. Same thing, laying it down flat. And I do the same thing. I believe his name is Keith, is doing mostly everything on a bed or on a couch. Very flat surfaces where if they do roll around and squirm, I'm right there. Like I can catch them close by. What else? Feeding, I wanted to share, there's something called, I wanted to see if I could screen share this.
Sure. While you're doing that, Christina, I really loved how you talked about like those support systems. And I really like always see it as like a toolbox. Like my mother-in-law, when I wasn't able to get out with them by myself, she would take us out for lunch once a week. And that was her way of like, getting me out of the house and giving me a bit of like reprieve. So I think it's so good to like realize this is part of my toolbox and not to be proud about it, but to be grateful. So go ahead. Were you able to screen share?
I'm not able. It says only the host can, but I want to see if y'all could see it just from my phone.
Screen sharing is now allowed if you want to.
Okay,
turn it on.
Thank you. I think that emotional piece is really. Oh, did I do something? Okay. Okay, can you all see the screen now?
Yes.
Did I do that?
Wow.
Okay, so my cousin actually found this, and it's called the baby bottle holder, which is hands-free, and it looks like it's just designed for lazy parents, but for us amputees, it's really helpful. I did hold a couple of bottles in this. Like I said, once your babies start learning, and Erica said it, they adapt so quickly. It's crazy how resilient kids are and how much they want to help you. So my son was super helpful, always wanted to help baby sister get fed. And then once she started holding her own bottle, we hardly use this, but maybe like for a first time parent who's also going through the same struggle, this is one of the tools that was really helpful and nifty, and it's easy, it's lightweight, you can carry it around. If you're out with the baby, you can also, take it wherever you're going.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina, for sharing that. And yeah, I know this is probably going to feel very emotional for everyone, but I just want to thank you again for all being vulnerable, and thank you. We're going to move to our next topic. And that is resources, or maybe the lack of resources for people with disabilities raising able-bodied children. And Erica, do you want to start us off on that?
Lack of resources for raising,
or resources that you found that have helped.
I mean, I'm not one that uses very many things. I guess the only thing I wish that was available is I wish that there were programs. It's like, I don't even know if this is a real world thing or not, but like, I wish there was resources available that would provide you with like care or like respite care, even though you work. Cause it's like, you want to work because there's value in that. I don't work full time, but I do work. but because I work, you're not eligible for services. Do you know what I mean by that? That's my biggest frustration. And I just wish that there was, I don't know, I don't really want to work full time, if I'm being honest, but I also just wish that it wasn't something that was like a limiting factor. Because yeah, it would be great to have someone, help with those extra things. Someone like I do have someone who cleans my house every other week because that's something that exhausts me and frustrates me, stuff like that.
Thank you for sharing that. From my own experience, thinking when my kids were little, the one big thing I felt very much like a loophole in the system. There was lots of support for kids with disabilities. There's lots of support for adults with disabilities, but there's lots of support for parents raising children with disabilities, but no support for parents with disabilities raising able-bodied children. And I think the biggest lack that I saw is when my daughter went into kindergarten, my son was 2, wasn't quite old enough, so she could help me do up his buckle so I could drive her to school. But then coming home and then getting my son back into the car at the end of the day was my problem. I could undo things, but not get them done up. And then also the safety, because he was 2 and he was a little more wild. And we always thought if we had had him first, we probably only would have had him. So anyway, so I tried to reach out to get some special needs busing and we were denied it. And told actually that I should have thought of that before I had children, which was, I know everyone's like, not the right thing to say, especially since people can become disabled at any point. And I also felt like I'm a good parent, being a really good parent. But anyway, that's where I felt like there was a lack of resources. But the same thing, like maybe if there had been some respite care or like abilities to bring programs to my kids, whereas like all my friends could take their kids to like library programs and stuff like that. And I really had to wait for that time when they were able to go out with me more independently. So Christina, I think you had also mentioned you wanted to talk to this topic.
About resources?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess I would kind of piggy off Erica. It's like those little things that you don't want to exhaust your own physical battery. And it's things like doing the laundry and doing the dishes and cooking and cleaning. By the time, we do those just mom things, or I guess housekeeping things, you're exhausted. And so then that kind of exhausts your battery with your own children. And that's why personally myself this year, I found that last year when I went back to work, although it was healing mentally, physically, I was exhausted. And that's why I needed so much support from other people to play that parent role, because, I was exhausted. I just worked a full day and now I have to be a mom to 2 toddlers, so having that support, I think a program like that where it's not, I guess, going to cost you extra, that's also cost effective, because that's another thing that we have to take account into our lives, is that it would be nice to not have to work at all, but then we also have life.
Right.
And, physical, financial things that we also have to take account. So I was going to add to that, but I already forgot.
Jason, you look like you had wanted to chime in on this.
All right, I got my mic off. I don't have a lot of the resources type stuff. The only resource that we have in Kentucky is it's called GRAD is what it's called. And if you are missing 2 arms, then they will hire a person to help you. And it can be your wife, it can be a friend, it can be whatever you want. It doesn't matter. So, and they really, in Kentucky, they want somebody to do this resource, and there's not very many bilateral arm amputees in Kentucky. So like you can't hardly get off of it, because if they don't spend it, the government don't spend the money, they take it away from them. So I literally get a little bit of money to pay my wife to go to the grocery or take care of the kids or do whatever she should be doing anyway, right? You know what I mean? Not should be, but
Could be. Yeah.
the things that she would be doing anyway, she can get a little bit of money for it.
Yeah. Well, it's then you have more time to spend on things that are really important in your family, right?
Yeah. I mean, if Jenny's going to cook dinner anyway, she can get paid to cook dinner, right? Like it's a really cool deal in Kentucky. It's not much money at all, but that's literally the only resource that we have with anything is that. So, and there might be other ones in other states. I don't know, but
did anyone else want to chime in on this topic before we move on? Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, we didn't have that in California. I need to move to Kentucky, man. Are you kidding me? Holy crap.
I know.
But yeah, we didn't have family. We had friends. All of our family was back east, either Connecticut or Jersey. So kind of like what you guys were saying, your physical battery, taking your mom, roll back and things like that. So my primary role was to do everything that I could to help support Christine in distracting our daughter Samantha. So like if it's before dinner, keep her out of the kitchen, go play with her, go do this, go do that. And then after dinner, okay, jump in a wheelchair and take her around the block for, half hour, 45 minutes. So, so that she has that time to do the things that she needs to do, to just clean up and, kind of get a quick recharge if she can sit down for 5-10 minutes, things like that. So we relied a lot on our friends. They would come over a lot. They would, babysit or, take her for a couple hours so that Christine and I could just kind of sit and vegetate in the house for a few minutes. So we got a lot of support from our friends that way. There weren't other resources that we really looked into, as far as home health aides or anything like that. But commenting on how the children learn how to deal with our disability, Samantha was potty trained much sooner. She learned how to pick up her toys a lot faster because daddy's about to run them over with the wheelchair. So if you like your toy, you need to pick your toy up and get it out of the way. And then like just picking her up off the floor from the wheelchair, I taught her whatever, showed her raise your arms, and then I pinch her with my legs and then lift from there and then grab her again so that I could put her in the wheelchair. And I mean, I trusted her at 4 to drive that wheelchair by itself with just her in the chair. She was that good. So they learn real quick. But yeah,
Awesome.
just being as supportive as I possibly could. The whole diaper changing. I know that her belly button fell off when I was changing the diaper, and I was like, oh, what did I do? What did I do? Then I'm like, oh, you, okay.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mike. Amanda, did you have something you wanted to add? You have to unmute.
Sorry about that. Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay. Real quick, when we're talking about money, I remember because resources basically come down about having the funding to support your disability, which is really expensive in the beginning, and then you add children onto that. I think Erica hit the nail on the head when you have to humble yourself to just learn how to ask for help. And there is a lot of power behind that vulnerability. And I found that out myself that I'm divorced. My children are from my first marriage. And so, I got divorced for a reason, and there was a lot of things happening that I felt very uncomfortable with. So I really had to step up to the plate without having the funds at that point to do it. I still had a job. They were holding on to it. God bless them. They kind of just put it on hold and didn't fire me so that I could carry the benefits for the boys. But I really humbled myself because I needed to learn how to drive and get around independently to basically take them to therapy for a lot of the damage that had been done. Unfortunately didn't, it just wasn't a healthy environment in the beginning. And we can go into divorce and custody and all kinds of stuff like that. But I kind of had to fast forward and figure a way out and humble myself to ask for help. And I created a GoFundMe page, which I think there's a lot of marketing behind our situations. And that happened to be what I did for a career before I got sick. So I knew how to market my story. And, a lot of people love, as you'll see on a lot of social media right now, and Christina, and Elizabeth and everyone, I've seen a lot of coverage that people love a good sappy story about a mom, right? And so humbling yourself to raise funds for that, I threw in the towel and I said, I'm just gonna ask for help. And it took me years to finally just ask for that help. And GoFundMe blew up overnight. And I've seen a lot of that happen for stories. So just getting someone to write the story correctly, to just say, hey, I'm waving the white flag. I need money and I need help to raise these kids. And there's a lot of good in the world. And so I think using that, like you got to use what you got. So I just wanted to add.
Thanks for sharing that, Amanda. And yeah, being an advocate for yourself. And I didn't share. So in the end, with my daughter first busing, one of the school aides at school walked her home every day. And it was such a blessing. And someone like stepped up and saw, okay, this person needs help, and it helped. So I was super grateful for that. There's a couple people we haven't heard from, and welcome, Elena, you're here, welcome. I wanted to talk to Lauren about when you go outside the house, how do you ensure their safety?
Oh, well, so my kids are a little bit older.
But when they were little, when they were little, how did you ensure their safety?
It was a lot of hang on to mom, like put your hand in my pocket or hold on to my residual limb. A lot of words, right? Like, don't do that. You can't run out into the street. I can't get you.
That's great. Yeah.
They were a little bit older. My youngest was just about to turn 5 when I first got sick. And my middle was 7. So it wasn't too difficult. They understood like regular outdoor safety rules, and just we had to emphasize the importance of staying right next to me. Yeah.
I was always I'd be surprised people say, your kids really listen to you. I'm like, oh, I always have to use my voice. And even now, I mean, my son is 17 and he hears his name and he's like, what? It's really funny.
I just use my hook.
That's fantastic.
No, when you talk about going outside and doing that kind of stuff with my kids, I mean, I was lucky enough. I lived on a farm, and I didn't have to worry about all the crazy busy roads or anything like that. But whenever I was hurt, my oldest was 21 months old and my youngest was 3 months old, and I literally taught which I got to go 2 hours for prosthetics, and I went to a company that didn't know really how to fit a prosthetic, an upper limb. So I mean, I went a little over a year before I even got fitted. But I was only in the hospital 12 days. And literally the day I got home, I taught my 21-month-old to drive my truck in my lap. So she would drive me around the country, to friends' houses or whatever. And, they could ride 4-wheelers when they were that young. And I mean, I would feed them and change diapers and do that kind of stuff whenever I had to. But I didn't do it when I had hands because it makes me sick. But
you sound like a husband I know.
Yeah, but like it, I don't know. I think my kids learned early. You get into car seats. I could buckle them and unbuckle them in my car seat, but I would not let them go anywhere by myself unless they could unbuckle themselves. And the only reason is I had a fear is if I had a car wreck and car caught on fire and I couldn't get them out fast enough, I wouldn't be able to live with myself for that. So if my wife was with me, great, they could go with me. Other than that, my kids never went anywhere with me by themselves until they could do their own car seats. Really and that was just a safety thing for me. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. And I'm lucky that, Jenny's family lives here. My family lives here. My sister, like my entire family lives right here by me, and I mean we had a lot of help too, so it was good. So
I'd love to hear from Tori. This is an open question about how did your children adapt to you having a limb difference?
For my son was 3 when I lost my limbs. So, I think the biggest challenge for me was the beginning, right? Because I mean, now my parents were around when I was in hospital, so that helped quite a bit. But as I think Elizabeth and Christina touched on, finding your mom role again. Because now, I mean, I was in hospital for 4 months. So I'm coming back to now being a mom to my son and them trying to look at me and be like, hey, mom is different now. So, believe it or not, the first few weeks, I would say my son would not come to me at all. I think part of it was he was mad that this happened to me. And then the other part was like, I mean, mom doesn't have hands, so she can do this or the other. So grandma, grandma, grandma. So I had to ease into him very slowly just because I didn't want him to feel like he had to do too much to compensate of the things I can do. But also I wanted us to learn things together. Now mommy has to do things differently. How can we do it together differently? So I involved him in a lot of things, and some things I would not force into, just ease into. And then we got to a point now, if I'm wearing my sleeve, he wants to help me push them on myself. So, and I never said no to that. Like, you can't do it. Let someone do it. I let him do it to where he knew himself that he cannot. So he would say, hey, grandma, can you help mommy? Or something like that. But I never pushed him away into helping. But also I wanted him to be a 3-year-old and not the adult that's helping mommy do everything. But
Right.
yeah, we eased up into each other where we started a new beginning of my new journey where now we are both learning. And if we have challenges, I always told him, you know, check it. I always checked in with him, how are you doing? What do you feel about how mommy's doing? And then therapy. Therapy was a big thing. I mean, as somebody who comes from an African background, therapy is frowned upon because we are supposed to figure things out. We're not supposed to be, going to therapy and have someone else figure us out. But I encouraged that from the very beginning. I was fortunate to be referred to an NGO, a nonprofit NGO, and they took me in as a patient. They were part of a hospital. It's called Craig Hospital. It's actually a spinal cord injury hospital, but they have their own NGO nonprofit that takes in new amputees and helps them ease into the amputee life, if I should say that. So one of the things that they do very efficiently is that they offer therapy, and they don't just offer therapy for me, they would offer therapy for anybody that's supporting me, including my son. So we used to have those therapy sessions. Unfortunately, when I got sick, it was 2019, and then we slipped into COVID immediately after. So it was like, but I mean, they did a lot of the Zoom accommodations. So my son had therapy for a while where he would just sit with the doctor and then we'll do their own things. And then we'll come back together and then the doctor will let me know what he's struggling with, things that he hasn't shared back and forth. But yeah, we check in with each other quite often. I still do it now. He's 9. I didn't assume that, hey, because mommy can do everything now, he's okay. No, because he still had challenges even in going to school.
That's right.
There was a point where when he started first grade, it's like he felt like he didn't want to show me to the rest of the kids because I mean we're gonna touch on topics here and we'll mention later where how do you deal with kids with other people staring, commenting, taking photos, things like that. So as we grew together, it was one thing to be at home and dealing with it, and another thing to be outside in the community as an amputee, and my son having to accommodate all these things around his environment. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up this topic, because this is something we want to talk about, is just like, how do we deal with those family dynamics and the balance of getting our kids to help with things but not getting them to do too much. And then just kind of all that guilt that is associated with that, and how you just carry forward and move forward. And it's different maybe for Anya and I, because we were born without our arms. But there's still lots of challenges with that. So I'd love to hear from some other panelists there, Elizabeth, and then Anya, and then Lauren. I'd love for you to chime in on this topic as well, and anyone else. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
I thought you raised such a good point, like how, especially my son was about 3 when I got sick, how they reintroduced him to me as, somebody that clearly looked very different and could, I was a stay-at-home mom. I worked part-time, but mostly with him. But I had this great line from a therapist that we talked to, and and I feel like we still say it. It's the same heart and the same head. So it's the same mommy, just has to do things a little bit different. And for that age range, I think it really helped him just realize I was the same. And I struggle with how much help do I want from them? They're now a little bit older. So if it's like stuff around the house, I have no qualms, like pick it up, go get that. But if it's like helping me put my liners on, I'm always like, are you sure you're okay to help? Like always checking in with them. And I've also found that like pretty much every new teacher, I always volunteer to come in and just read a book and introduce myself. And the kids are just, some of my son's kids and my daughter's kids are just used to me now. And there's a few books I'm happy to recommend them. One I love is When Charlie Met Emma. It's about a boy who meets a little different girl on a playground, and they talk about how different isn't bad or strange or wrong. It's just different, and different is good. And there's also another one called Rescue and Jessica about a woman who lost her legs in the Boston Marathon bombing, and how she has a service dog. And it's just, I think teaching your kids and letting them help you explain has been really great for me. Like even my son, in 4th grade, he just asked his enrichment teacher if I could come speak to like his entire grade. Didn't even ask me. He just like wanted to. So I find like the sooner that they're comfortable with it, it's better. And I almost kind of like, I have my little elevator pitch, like what happened to you, especially if you're around a lot of kids. And I teach them that also, like, you can say this is what happened to your mom. Like if they have like that language to use, I also found that really
and
for them
I think
to feel confident.
That positive language, like I like to try to give people the language I want them to use. I'll say, I was born this way and I use my feet. Isn't that neat? Instead of giving them the opportunity to say that's weird. And I agree. Go into your kids' classes and talk to them, normalize it. That's so good to do. And I was going to say, so one time I did go into my son's class and did a little presentation, and I had a video that the War Apps kind of had done on me before I had kids, and I was pushing a grocery cart and doing all my day-to-day things, and my son was sitting in my lap, and he looks at me, he's in grade 1, I think, and he says, Mom, you never push the grocery cart anymore. Like, it's so accusatory. And I'm like, well, it really hurts my ribs to do that, actually. And I didn't realize that all he remembered was his older sister pushing that grocery cart for me, because that made it easier. And we made grocery shopping a family task together to do together. So I thought, I was kind of like, you're so funny. You don't even realize, but it was very funny because that was his recollection. But Anya, go ahead.
Right. I just wanted to touch on the whole finding balance of like, obviously I was born without arms, right? So this is my kid. That's all he knows. As a matter of fact, I remember him being maybe 5 or 6, and he's like, wait a minute, Mom. So are these your feet or your hands? Because they look like feet, but they work like hands. So, and, as he got older, he kind of like was like, oh, but when he was little, it was normal. And I did ask him for help with certain things. Like he would, I used to live in Chicago when he was little and winters and all of that. So like he was going to preschool and helping me zip my coat, which is like, and I had like an upside down double zipper. And going back to how our kids learn things a lot faster, it's like, no, the kids are capable. It's just that the parents do a lot for them, which is kind of unnecessary. But I wanted to make sure that he was going to be a kid and not feel like he is taking care of me, as opposed to me taking care of him. So that was a struggle. And I've always tried really, really hard not to put that on him.
Yeah.
But he's 15 now, and we've been talking about, well, hey, in a few years, you are going to be old enough to like be independent and move out. And he said, what do you mean? I'm never moving out because I need to be here and help you. So that was kind of, I'm trying to teach him like, yes, I do appreciate the help, um, with the harder things, the things that are more difficult. I'm small and I'm weak, so like, and he's a 50-year-old boy, so sometimes I need his strength and his
Right.
muscles and all of that.
But
But it's hard because I want him to not feel like he always has to be with me and take care of me and
that's
be
right.
there to help. So um that's difficult. Being a parent that maybe needs a little more help, but then not making your child feel like they are the caretaker.
That's right. I totally agree with that. And we probably all have things like personal things that we've maybe needed our kids to help us with. And that is really difficult. Yeah, so grateful to my kids. But I agree, Anya, like starting that conversation of helping them see that they can be independent from you as well, and that you're going to be okay. And that, just because your child moves out doesn't mean that you stop talking to each other. I hope mine are on the verge. So hopefully not. Um, Lauren, I'd love to hear from you, and then Jason.
Well, again, like my youngest was almost 5. And at that point, we were already kind of trying to put a little bit more age appropriate responsibilities on them, like unloading the dishwasher, or loading and unloading the dishwasher, just getting your clothes together for laundry and putting that in the washing machine. So we had kind of planned to do that gradually. It just was it happened faster and sooner when I got home, and the kids could obviously see that I wasn't able to do any of that stuff now.
But Lauren, that's not always a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Those things, right?
Right. And I think they kind of just mimic like things that I had been helping them with. So before I figured out how to put toothpaste on my toothbrush on my own, they were so used to like mommy helping them do that. And when I couldn't anymore, it's like, oh, you need help now, so we'll do it for you. And it was just kind of voluntary, really, with more like they'll help get my shirt out of a dresser or something, as far as like helping me personally. I can't reach my top dresser if I don't have legs on, and I like to get dressed before putting legs on. So they'll help like reach into the top drawer if I can't get anything, or if it's the end of the day and it's time to take legs off. My son is like the first one there to pull my sleeves down and get my liners off, and he likes to step on my foot so that I can wiggle my leg out.
I love that. It really sounds like to me like, like, yeah, sometimes maybe we ask our kids more things, but that they grow so much into such more beautiful humans because of that experience as well. And there's so many things that I notice about my kids that, like, because of what they've experienced, they're different individuals and better human beings. And I'm really grateful for that. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm very independent. I don't like people to do a lot of stuff for me. That's just the way I was raised, I guess. But I guess early on, so my two girls were, 21 months old and 3 months old, and I did a lot of stuff with them. I don't think that they necessarily really had to help me, but it's like when Billy Grace drove my truck at 21 months old, that was a lot of fun for her, right? Yeah, it was cool for me too, because I didn't have to do it, but that was a lot of fun. And I think it teaches your kids to be able to know how to do things at an early age. Like, even at the very beginning, before I had prosthetics, I couldn't get change out of my pocket or get money out of my wallet or whatever. So Billy Grace would help me do that kind of stuff. But when she got change out of my pocket, it went in her piggy bank. So it was like a treat for her. It wasn't she's got to help me do stuff. But then, and I didn't say this early on, but when you first become an amputee, there's a lot of stuff that's frustrating, especially when you're so mechanically inclined and you like to do so much stuff on your own. And early on, I realized that if I got upset about something or took me a long time to figure something out, instead of bringing it inside the house to my kids and my wife and yelling or get mad or whatever, then I would go outside and kick rocks. I would just take it out by myself. I didn't want them to see that or whatever. So I kind of hid that from them somewhat, I guess. But then I'm so active with them. I've been, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't volunteer their time doing anything anymore. But early on, like at my elementary school, we didn't have a baseball field. So I was always in the construction side of things before I got hurt. And I built the 2 baseball fields, concession stand, and 4 dugouts. So I think kids seen me doing stuff that people don't, even with hands, don't do. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then I was a softball coach. I was for Billy. I was a softball coach for Campbell. I'm a baseball coach for Axel. Now he's playing football too. So I don't know much about football, but I'm the chain guy. So I'm always so active. I'm not the dad sitting in the grandstands complaining that their kids ain't playing or whatever. I got a batting cage in my shop. I throw baseballs at my son every single night. There's nothing that I'm so involved in their life. I've been on PTO. I've done speeches at schools. I've done, everything that I can do. I take my son hunting. He's beside me all the time. So, but I also I think it's time for, he's 13 now and he's probably been doing it for a couple of years, but yeah, I can take trash out, but guess what? He needs a job. He's got to have responsibilities. So he takes trash out. Now, if he ain't home, I'll take it. But, if I'm going to change a tire on something, yeah, I can do it if he ain't here. But if he's at home, he's going to do it because he needs to learn how to do that kind of stuff. My girls don't do it.
I like that you brought that up, Jason, because sometimes it could be reverse where we feel so much guilt about maybe our family circumstances that we don't get them to do things because, yeah. So how do you deal with that then?
Yeah, I mean, and the kids think I'm cool being able to do all the stuff I do, and their friends think I'm fun to be around. And I mean, my dad did all this stuff for me too. My dad made me do stuff all the time. I worked every day. So I don't think I do anything different than the way I was raised, really. I mean, I don't have any guilt on my kids working at all. I mean, they got to learn it. They got to do it regardless of if, got arms or don't have arms. You know what I mean? I would be doing the exact same thing. And I'm just not going to treat them any different than I would if I had hands. And, and I have fun with them. I joke with them. And, I still tell my son, you still can't beat me up. Last night he got me in a headlock and held me in a headlock. He's 13 now. And I let him do it. I let him do it for a couple minutes. And I was like, all right, are you done? Because you're fixing to get hurt. I'm not going to play no games. And then, I get up and I get him down and I tickle him for 30 minutes till he almost pees in his pants. And I'm like, I told you to quit. But I'm just going to treat him like I would have before. And I do. I mean, everything I do, I wanted to be the dad that I was going to be before I lost my hands. And I'm still the dad that I was wanting to be when I lost my hands. From the very first day I became a father, I had a plan on what I want to do with my kids, and I'm still doing that. So
Good for you. That's really inspiring, Jason. Thank you for sharing that. Elena, are you able to chime in at all? We'd love to hear from you. Maybe because you have kids at all different ages and about to have a baby as well. So we'd love to hear it, like maybe about some family planning, maybe some adaptations that you did, anything. Sean, I might have you unmute Elena. There we go. Perfect.
I figured it out. I was like, where am I swiping? Hi, everyone. Sorry I was late. I was working. I was trying to join. Yeah, my kids, they are 19, 15, 6, and then I'm 8 months pregnant. So, yeah, they're all over the place. Yeah, with my kids, I never really, I never knew exactly how I was going to do it when I first had my firstborn, but I think that these kids of mine have learned to adapt such an early age, since this is the beginning of how they saw mom, and my kids were able to mature. Like, for example, like we were just speaking about, like when out in public, my kids would hold my purse or hold on to the bottom of the shirt, and they would know, like, if you take off, like, mommy can't really grab you, or things like that. My kids they just adjusted to it. They didn't see me different until maybe my last child was the one that questioned more than the first two. The first two took it as is and just made it normal. It was all normal to them growing up. But my last one just kind of questioned it and was like, mommy, why don't you have any arms? Like, why are you different compared to all these other parents and things like that? Like, and so I had to teach her, like, it's hard to explain it to a little one that's 6 years old, like, this is how you're born, this is normal for us, that mommy's still special and mommy's still able to do what she can. But she's still learning and she's still adapting to it. I remember taking her to Skills for Life when I met everyone at the Houston event, and I remember her seeing Ane and Anya sitting there, and she pointed at you guys, and she was just like, mommy, like, look. And I was like, they look like mommy, right? And she was like, yes. And I go, but they're beautiful, aren't they? And she's like, yes. She goes, mommy. And and it was nice for her to adapt and see those kids like mommy, other limb differences, because I honestly feel like it's really nice to teach your kids at an early age, people that are born different. And I feel like my kids have matured a lot faster for their ages, for being born with a parent without limbs. They just learned it and they want to help. And that's the thing, is that I don't want to take that from my kids and be like, no, you can't help. I let them for a little bit and just teach them what they can and they can't be doing. But I still want them to be kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're nurturing. They're like, it's a second nature.
Yeah. Thank you, Elena. Yeah, I'd love to carry on with that conversation of what have you noticed that qualities that your children have developed because your family circumstances are different. And then what I'd like you to start thinking about is, maybe, are there activities that your kids want to do or your family wants to do and you can't participate in? And how do you handle that dynamic? So let's talk about lessons first. Lessons your kids have learned because their parent has a disability. Anyone want to start us off?
Can I start?
Yeah, Jason and then Mike. Yeah. And then Brandon. Yeah.
One thing is, I really want my kids to know that life's not fair and life should be hard and there's ups and downs. And it's all about your attitude on how you overcome and how you get past those struggles. So I never want my kids to think that life's going to be perfect, ever. And I think that they've definitely noticed that and seen that with me, but they've also seen that I have taken it the best that I can, and that I've been super strong with what I've been dealt with. I've always had a lot of faith. I tell them a lot of stuff. We go to church every weekend, and I tell them, it's like, John 13:7 says that we may not really understand what he's doing right now, but one day we will. Whether that's the day that you realize that, hey, I got a purpose. Might be the day that you die, and it's like, hey, I know why all this happened now. You know what I mean? And but I will always, I mean, especially with my son playing sports, and he'll come out, just say he didn't bat very good one weekend. I'm like, dude, it happens, but the only way to get better is to walk outside and practice some more. Like, don't complain about it, fix it. And maybe that's sometimes super hard on them, but I just don't want them thinking that you can't overcome anything. My dad was a drill sergeant in the Army. So, growing up, we couldn't say we couldn't do something. I mean, you did it, period. You figured it out. You worked on stuff. You figured out how things worked, and you just went on with it. So I think that's the biggest thing that my kids, and I can see that my kids has got a lot more determination than a lot of kids that are out around them now. I mean, and it's sad because I see these dads that don't get involved with their kids. They don't do sports with their kids. They don't do nothing with their kids. I hope and I think that one day, whenever I die, that my kids be like, man, my dad was with me all the time, doing everything with me. Like, and I think that's super, super important to be involved, especially with younger people. Like, get involved with them, and and then you asked about even activities. There's nothing I can't do with my kids. I'm gonna try everything, anything and everything they want to do. I'm gonna be a part of, and I'll learn it. Get on YouTube, I'll find something, figure out what they're supposed to be doing, and
That's
help
good.
them do it. So
Perfect. Thank you. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, Jason, you're like my spirit animal, man. I'm down. I'm down with you. There was nothing that we didn't do with our daughter. And kind of going backwards a little bit, I remember the day that she figured out I didn't have hands, and was still in bed that morning after Christine feeding her, and she started lifting up my arm and looking underneath it and trying to find out, well, where's the hand? And that part was like trippy. And then how to interact with other children and things like that. She would watch me how I interacted with other children to make them calm and say silly things or do goofy things. And I remember one day, just out of the blue, or at the park, and she starts punching me in the gut, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then I noticed that the other little children were staring at me. So she was trying to put the other children at ease, and playing and interacting with me and trying to get them comfortable. And that really broke me up and tore me up. Because that level of empathy that she was showing. But when she got older, whether it was gymnastics or dance or 4-H and horseback riding, and like you, Jason, just being involved because that's what I want to do. Not that I feel obligated, but it certainly does help shame the other parents that are just sitting on their thumbs. And you're like, hey, if I'm out here busting my butt and sweating and dragging things around, you need to get out here too. So like, we would work the snack bar, or we were really helicopter's a bit strong, helicopter parents, but
we were involved.
Yeah, we were involved because we had the luxury of that. We didn't have to go back to work. I was able to retire, so we were able to do with all that. I'm trying to figure out what your original question was supporting.
No, that's actually really good, Mike. So thank you for answering that. I wanted to also mention, though, like sometimes there are things that you just can't do with your family. I've experienced that. So my family really likes to ski. And I never want them to feel like they can't go and enjoy that activity because I can't go with them. So I think it's really important that we are supportive of our family, of having maybe, and I don't even see it as like respite of them. I know that I have my own hobbies, and that's what I'll focus on when they go do those things. And I think that's important, not to like hold kids back if there is something you can't do. And if you can figure out a way to do it, then yeah, fantastic, do that. Like, so one thing for me was I stopped bike riding because it was just not comfortable for my neck and stuff. And then we ended up getting that great grant from the Child Athletes Foundation and got a tandem bike. And so now I'm out biking with my family again. And that has been so great. So Yeah, I just wanted to share that was really important. But we were talking about lessons. Does anyone else notice lessons from their kids or things, qualities that you've noticed about them? Tori and then Christina. Yeah.
I mean, I think my son is more kind and compassionate to other people, any struggles. He's quick to recognize and address it. I remember when he was in kindergarten and preschool, his teachers always told me that he always wants to help the other kids. So if another kid is struggling, say they can't answer this question, he will figure out a kinder way to let them learn or know how to answer the question. So he volunteered a lot. Another thing that he used to do when they got to school, when he was in kindergarten, all the kids usually line up to get into school, but then they used to put their lunches in a different spot. So and their backpacks. So for the very little kids that were struggling with their lunch boxes and their backpacks, he used to go grab them for them, and then he will put them away for them so that they can just, walk into school or class. If they're struggling, even during recess time, if somebody is bullying another kid, he will intervene. So the teachers used to tell me this. And I think that's a quality that he continues to have. He traveled to Kenya to visit my parents over summer. And the one thing that my aunts and my mom and dad were saying is that they're very proud of how I've raised them. See, when we're doing it and we're doing what most people are saying, I mean, how you talk to them, keep talking to them. Hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to be kind of this way or that way. I think, and if everybody would agree, our kids now are more attentive, more kinder, more respectful even. I remember one time my son, during recess, because I used to walk my son to school when he was in first grade, and other kids used to stare at me a lot, obviously, because they're kids and they're curious. Others would point and do all these things. So the first thing my son usually did was he used to hold my hand. The minute he sees the stairs and everything, he will hold my hand. But for that, he's, like Mike said, he's trying to be empathetic to me, but to also show the other kids, hey, I know my mom doesn't have arms and legs, but she's cool. She can do this, she can do that, the other. But there's one time during recess, he heard the other kids laughing at him and say, haha, have you seen Xander's mom? She doesn't have hands and legs, and they were saying all these things, but in a bully laughing kind of way. So he came home, and like I said earlier, we have a very open communication with him. And he was in second grade. So he came and said, Mommy, I'm gonna tell you something, and it's gonna make you very, very sad. And then I told him, hey, Xander, we have an open communication. So what's going on? So he explained everything that happened. So naturally, as a mom, I mean, you're like mama bears. You're like, who did this? When did they do it? Why did they do it? Did you tell a teacher? Da, da, da. So it was all these things going on in my head. But I took that as an opportunity for me to teach these kids about, disability and the challenges we have and the cool things that we can actually have. So I emailed the teacher and I told his teacher what happened, but I suggested that if they can have me come to class or come to talk to other kids about a disability. Immediately she was happy about it and talked to the principal. So I went to school, and of course I carried my running blades, my electives and all these things. So I talked to the first I read to them, and then Xander obviously sat beside me, holding my hand, and we read together to the kids. But then the following year, the principal invited me again, and then I did talking sessions to the rest of, from not K, but first grade through fifth grade. So I was telling them, the things that I can do. I can actually run with my running blades. So I mean, they ask very interesting questions. I mean, they're like, so how do you put them on? And then Xander would come and help me. If I needed, to put my hand prosthetics, he would come and help me put them on, take my sleeves off if I had to change into my blades and things like that. So the kids found it very, very cool. So every time I go to school, I mean, any kid at any grade will be like, hi, Miss Victoria, how you doing? Now they would say hi to me instead of pointing and wondering and this and that. And then again, like Anne was mentioning the sports. I mean, my son loves soccer. I mean, he loves soccer, but mommy likes running. So with my everyday wear legs, they're heavy. So even though when I was younger, I'm an avid athlete. I love all sports, basketball, soccer, whatever. I'm in it. So, but with the soccer parts, it's hard to run with the everyday legs. It's also hard to play soccer with a blade. So of course, I will attend all his soccer practices and everything, but then there are kids there who are not in his school that we went through the same thing. So when they point or do all these things, my son would go to them and say, hey, do you want to come say hi to mommy, to my mom? So they would come, they say hi to me, and then I would prompt them, do you have any questions? And they would ask like a million questions. And of course, the parents are like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to bother you. I'm like, no, they're curious. It's better for them to ask and for you to contribute to their questions than them having to do all this pointing and doing all these things. Because
I
now
agree, Tori. Yeah, it's about helping control that conversation to make it positive.
Yeah, because they will go and talk to other. I mean, in as much as you explain that to them, they will go and talk to other kids about it.
Exactly.
So in a company of other kids who don't know, it's like, no, it's cool. They can do this and they can do the other. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tori. Christina, I'd love to hear from you. And then if Elizabeth and Lauren and Anya want to talk about, things that just something brief that something they notice in their kids. So go ahead, Christina.
Sorry, I was getting like choked up just listening to, because I'm seeing the same things in my own kids. Like I said before, they're just so resilient, and it's crazy the things they do, like Mike said, to make you feel comfortable as well. And my son is very much the compassion one, very protective of mommy. At soccer practice, they got near me and he was like, hey, be careful with my mom, and like just like back up. And he also like gets mad if he doesn't get to help me, and he loves being my little helper in the kitchen and things like that. So just that compassion piece, like everybody is saying. And then my daughter, when I walk her into daycare, she'll take my arm like she's holding my hand, and she's only 2, or she's about to be 2. So she doesn't know any better from holding my hand to holding my arm, but maybe she does know the difference. And that's her, little mind. Okay, my mommy's different, but that's okay, because I can still hold her and she still takes me to daycare. So that's what I got really choked up about. So they're wonderful. And I am also a school psychologist, so I see kids on a daily basis. So explaining that piece to them, what happened to me, I got a lot of questions. And like Elizabeth had brought up, we have our spiel in our head of already what to say. I know they're going to ask questions, or sometimes I'll just this is me, this is what I can do, these are some things I need help with, but I try to do everything by myself. And that's what you don't know until you try is my spiel. So just having that ready in your head.
I love that. Thank you. Elizabeth, how about you?
Yeah, just echoing what everybody is saying. I always say that the silver lining in this is that my kids are independent. As we've talked about, they're quicker than their peers to do most things, and their empathy for all kinds of people. Like Tori, my son, teachers have told me my kids stick up for other kids. I've had other like wheelchair users be like, if I didn't see you with your kid, I'd know that they had experience, because they just are kind and open. And to me, that's just I don't always think everything happens for a reason, but I do think good can come from every situation. And I think that is like the good, best part is that they're just going to be really great people. And I always say that they're going to have something to write about for their college essays. That's a little bit more unique. And I'm so sad that I have to go because I want to hear everything. But I know this has been super positive and I don't want to be negative, but I want every parent to know that there is going to be hard times. And I suggest feeling it, being sad. There's going to be something that you want to do and you can't, and it's going to suck and it's going to be frustrating, but it's okay. Like there's going to be other things that you can do and special things you can do. I think my just advice in general to anybody going through anything hard is I always would say like have the bad moments, not the bad days, because if you can't like feel it, then it's not sustainable. So I like could sit here and talk to you guys forever, and I love all the stories, and I feel like we should all try to bring the kids to Skills for Life so that they can like hang out with each other and have their therapy sessions because it's really cool to hear.
It's a lot on this.
Special kids, we really do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Elizabeth.
You're so welcome.
Completely agree. I like with my own kids, I see my daughter is a very compassionate person. She will just do and help and what she sees when there's a need. And I love that about her. And then my son is so protective. Like if he hears someone, he's like, that's my mom. Or he saw someone take a picture of me driving and he was so upset. We went grocery shopping after we stopped around the store. He's this little, 3 or 5-year-old. I can't remember even how old he was, but he was so angry. And then last week at volleyball, I was telling some of the fans to simmer down and stop, mocking the other team. And I don't think they actually listened to me because my son looked over at them and saw that I was talking to them and mouthed to them to be quiet. And so it was just this instinct that that's my mom and I'm going to protect her. Or like we go for walks and he always like, Mom, there's some ice there, watch out. And I'm just so grateful for like these deep lessons that happen that maybe wouldn't have happened otherwise. But Lauren and Anya, do you want to pitch in on this topic? And then I think we'll probably just close the topic because I think we've covered so much today and it's been really, really beautiful. And I want to make sure we're
off. Bye guys.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Go ahead, Lauren.
I think just to echo what everyone else has been saying, like the kids have learned that there are hard times, and you can get frustrated and, like feel your feelings, but we can figure this out. Just because you don't know how to do something now doesn't mean you're never going to know how to do it. And with my kids specifically, I've also noticed, they've always been really kind children. But they've been in social situations since my amputations where they've been with other kids who have like obvious disabilities, and a lot of other kids don't know how to interact with people who have a disability, and my children just kind of gravitate towards them and include them and treat them like they're just any other person, and try to figure out how to include them in whatever activity is going on that they wouldn't typically be included in because nobody knows how to adapt to them. And so I'm really grateful for that.
That's a beautiful way that your children have adapted, Lauren. Thank you for sharing that. Anya?
Yeah, I'll share quick 2 little stories, but I think, one is, having them be just compassionate and caring towards us is one thing, but also like we've talked about, them with other people. I remember I was probably a few years ago, I was walking into a store and all of a sudden I noticed my son is not next to me. I'm like, where is this kid? Well, I turn around and he's standing holding the door. As we were walking in, he saw that there was this old lady walking in and she was going real slow. So he like stood there and waited for her to hold the door open for her. And that was, I think a lot of kids nowadays, with world we live in are so like oblivious to everything around them, and they're just kind of focused on themselves. They don't even pay attention to see if anybody needs help around them. But to finish off, I wanted to share like the cutest story from my son's life. Um, it was back when we lived in Chicago. We lived in a condo, and I don't even know how that happened, but he was asking me about things that maybe I haven't gotten a chance to do, right? And the one thing was I never was able to make a snowman because I'm outside in shoes, and it's like, well, how am I supposed to do that? That kid got a bucket, went downstairs, brought me a whole bucket of snow. We went out on the balcony, sat down, and made little miniature snowmen. And then he was like, we should make a list of all the things you didn't do yet so that we could figure out how we could do it together. And I thought it was the cutest thing ever. And just like, yeah. So it's awesome. Those little things that they learn. And it's not like other children aren't capable of learning those things. It's just that there's no emphasis put into this fast-paced life, and you know, they live different lives with having parents like us. So I think yeah, there's definitely good that comes out of it.
Thank you, Anya. That is a really beautiful story you shared. Thank you. Is there any other last words of wisdom that anyone wants to share? Something that is just really burning in your mind right now that you want to share? You've exhausted it really well. I just want to thank all of our panelists for jumping in wherever they could and for sharing such personal and helpful things as well. And we hope that this resource is a great resource for you if you're watching this right now, to be able to tackle the job of being a parent, because it's a beautiful thing, and no arms shouldn't stop us from being parents. So thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelsey, let me see that little girl.
Yeah, let's see Patty.
All I see is the top of the head.
Yeah, she made an appearance for the last.
There she
Oh,
Like, who are these people?
Cutie.
Like, no, thank you. Bye.
Anyway, thank you everyone. Now we can like breathe.
Bye.